right. When did you go into the service?
Went in and I enlisted in July of 1942, but that was to go back to school. And they let me stay in school until March of 43 rather, and then they took me into the service and I became a pilot.
How old were you then? How old?
Oh boy, I was about 20.
What branch of the service did you choose to get assigned to?
Well,
Where
I
you
enlisted in
assigned
the Air Corps, Army Air Corps. That's where I enlisted.
What did you like? Is that something you wanted to pursue, or
No,
you
I
just chose
was
that
just
out
escaping a draft.
How did you feel when you said goodbye to your family?
When I said goodbye to my family, it's funny. You knew it's something you had to do, and you just did it. And the goodbyes were just natural. Well, we'll be seeing you, and that was it.
All right.
Don't-
What was it like going from civilian life to life in the military?
First of all, you started out and you went to basic training, which is, marching around and learn how to march and all that stuff. And that was we lived in Lake Worth, and then that was at Miami Beach. So all of Miami Beach at that time was a base. We used the golf courses for training, and we ate in the hotels for dinner, and we had the movies there. The whole base was Miami Beach. And that's how you started, and you spent, I think it was about 1 month there, and then they sent me off with some of the other people. We went to colleges, because they didn't need us at the time. But they wanted to keep us moving around, I guess. So I went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Cathedral of Learning, University of Pittsburgh, and I stayed there 1 month, and then I went to Nashville, where they tested you to see whether you were going to be a navigator, bombardier, or pilot.
Where did you serve? Over in Europe and in the U.S.?
Yeah, I served in Europe, mostly. In fact, all in Europe. Went to sent us overseas, and signed us to 15th Air Force, and we went there and we stayed there from I guess about April of 44 to May of 45, and that's when I'd finished my missions and came back home.
All right. What theater were you in?
What?
What theater?
Theater, in the European theater.
Were you ever wounded? Did you ever
No,
suffer any injuries?
I never wounded.
Did any of your friends ever get hurt? Did you ever lose any friends?
No, never lost anyone. In fact, they used to say to me, "We're going to stay with you because you're coming home."
What specific details do you remember? What sights, sounds, smells, sensations, anything you remember specifically?
Specifically? Not specifically. It's just the way things turn out, I can remember various missions. I don't remember the missions as such, but I remember going on missions. It's funny. I have a buddy, my buddy and I, his crew, I think, got shot down, and he was in the squadron area, and they assigned us both a crew. I went over as a co-pilot, and my aircraft commander, he became lead ship commander. Went with the squadron CO on missions. So I didn't go. I was sitting around doing nothing. So they gave me a crew, and this guy, a buddy of mine, went with me. He was part of the crew, and so we used to change off aircraft commander duties on missions. And he remembers more about it than I do. It's funny. It seems to me, I've been meaning to say this, that men that went through the service and went through combat in an aircraft especially, that was a major thing for them in their life was doing that kind of thing. And they remember it like crazy. And I don't remember as much because when I got out of the service, I went with Pan Am right away. So I was more Pan Am than being in the service. But missions, I remember, the only thing I remember about them was that they, when you went on one, you'd look at the board, go, and you'd see who was going to go on it. And if they signed the group navigator, going to be a milk run somewhere. But otherwise, I'll start out with, after you knew you were going to go on this mission, they had your crew up there, and they had your position in the flight, and they wake you up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and you go and get breakfast, and you get on these trucks, and you go over to group headquarters, where they had this big barn, which they converted into a briefing room. And you sat on these so-called benches. They weren't benches, they were little stools that were made of metal. And what they were originally was to protect the fins of the bombs that came to keep them straight. So they used them afterwards. They loaded the bombs in. They'd use them for stools. This is where you sat. And they had a big board up there with a curtain on it. And then they pulled the curtain and you'd see where you were going. Now, if you're going to Vienna, everybody would go, oh, it's a bad place to go. Lots of flak. And so then you'd know, and that's what they'd tell you the route and where you expect flak, where you could expect German aircraft fighters and things like that. And then you went on climbed to about, when you left the field was a metal strip that was fastened together, grating like, and then it was out in a wheat field, and it was around it was in a farmhouse where the squadron was. Each squadron had a different farmhouse in the area, and the big house was where the group headquarters was, and that's where you got the briefing. And they'd pull that curtain back, and there was that route with string, attached, and they'd tell you where the flak was and where the Germans were supposed to be and stuff like that. And then you'd take off. First, the group leader would take off, and he'd take a big, wide turn. Then all the rest of the flights were supposed to get in behind him, and they took a less turn. Well, by the time you get down to our squadron, the minute you took off, you had to quick make a turn because you want to stay in formation, and get in formation, and then you'd take off across the north of the Adriatic, going up to Vienna. And boy, the sky would be, this is wintertime of 44, and you'd see the trails, the vapor trails of all the airplanes going somewhere, and it would practically coat the sky with vapor trails, overcast. Amazing. And then you see somebody over here going somewhere and somebody over here going another place, and you're going to Vienna. Well, okay, now you're going up there, and everybody looking for fighters on the way up there. Charge your guns, just make sure they work. Well, what was so funny there's another story. It's a buddy of mine and I were sitting in the cockpit, and we're flying formation, and we're number 4 position. And the order came to check your guns to make sure they work. Okay, we get this thing bang through the front windshield like that, went right by me. And I thought, boy, wonder if we look to see if we can see any blood. Find out, no, it was a shell casing, came through the window. But it's funny, everybody's so startled, and you look at each other, and you look down at yourself to see if you've been hit. Oh, the funny part. And then okay, so everything's working fine, and so you're off. Now, we had a group commander, Glansberg, I'll never forget him. He had a P-38 unarmed. Do you know what a P-38 is? Okay, it's a twin-engine fighter with a twin boom, and he had it with no armament on it, but full of gasoline. And he'd go up on your formation and follow you and keep airplanes in together so you get a better bomb pattern. But everybody's a little bit leery about getting too close to the other guy because the flak might hit the other guy and he'd blow up and then he'd take you with him. And so he would go almost to the target and then he'd go back home again. And then we had fighter escort too, the P-51s. This was out of Foggia, Italy, which is the instep, no, it wasn't, it was the heel of, no, wasn't that, the spur on Italy is where most of the aircraft were based. A lot of B-24s there and a lot of B-17s, and then the fighters were based there too, our fighters. And then, okay, now you're on your way to the mission, and of course, in wintertime, you've got this heated suit. It's like a blanket, and it's got cord in, it's got wires in it. Well, sometimes maybe your glove didn't work. Something didn't work on it, and it's cold. So you could take it down while the other guy was flying, and you clip it in where your heated shoe was. You knew that worked. Yeah. And then so you could get heat that way to your hand. And once in a while you'd have to do that. And then of course they get to the initial point where you're going to turn to go over the target. And that's where you lose. Now we're flying at about 27,000 feet. And so we make the turn, and this was to get the wind behind you and to go downwind a little bit, and you're going down at changing altitude at 500 feet a minute just to get faster over the target. Mm-hmm. And that's where you turn your heater off. You don't need that. You're sweating enough. and then, of course, you over the target, drop your bombs, and you hope to make a good pattern on the railroad yard or the whatever it is they want to bomb. And then you turn off, and then you're going down another 500 feet a minute to get out of there fast. And then you start at home, across south over the Adriatic and back to Cerignola, where our base was in Italy, right below Foggia, where most of the bases were. And that mission would usually take about 8 hours. It's a long time. And people would take K rations. You've heard of what a K ration is, do you know? Okay. A K ration is a waxed box about the size of a book there. And it would have cigarettes in it, 3 cigarettes. It had a little bar of chocolate, and then it had a can of Spam or something in there, and crackers. And could be a meal. That's what it's supposed to be, a meal, anyhow, make up a meal. And some guys would take those and with them when they went on a mission. Well, I made ketchup sandwiches. That's I used to take. And I had a parka. I put it in that parka and it would freeze practically. So on your mission, on your way home, when you get below 10,000 feet, you could take your oxygen mask off and then you could eat your sandwich. Well, because boy, we were really hungry by that time. And so everybody's still in formation now, going back to the base. And then we'd get a critique, go to a debriefing, and they would want to know how many fighters did you see, and your crew, did they knock any out of the air or stuff like that. and then they'd give you a debriefing. Look, how did the bomb pattern look from the tail gunner? And then the lead ship, the tail gunner, had a camera focusing down to take the pictures. It'd have to be one of the other ships in the squadron, because the lead ship had already gone over the target, and it would take the pictures of the target and to see how the bomb pattern fell. And they'd already developed them, so you go into the debriefing, and then they would tell you what was wrong. Somebody didn't drop it like they should have, or something hung up, or the bombardier made a miscalculation and they didn't hit it fully. And that really hurt. So you have to go do it again sometime. Yeah. And well, then you get back to the base, and then it's you get a debriefing from your squadron too. You're a squadron intelligence officer, and he'd want to know what happened too. And then they usually gave you a little shot of whiskey. Well, this buddy of mine, we didn't drink whiskey, so the crew was standing outside the briefing room, and we'd give it to them. They'd put it in a Coke bottle and save it for a while, the enlisted men, so they could take a little swig of it, with a Coke. That worked out pretty good for them, because the enlisted men weren't allowed to have whiskey. Oh, let's see what else I can think of. Okay, and then after it's getting close to nighttime now, so you're go get a shower, and then go to get supper and go to bed. Yeah.
Do you remember the worst moment you've ever experienced in
The
World
worst
War II?
moment?
Yes.
I think the worst moment was when that shell casing came through the windshield and we thought we were wounded.
Can you tell me about the chaos of the war? Was it, did you feel unsafe flying through safe airways?
You did when you're going, well, it's something you did because everybody else did it. You didn't, you just did it, went and did it, flew the mission and everything, and didn't even think about whether you're going to come back or not. And the other thing was, as far as that goes, the thing is, if you flew too many missions in a row, you got sort of thin. And I went over to group headquarters one time to see these fellows I know. They were intelligence people. They say, "What happened to you? You don't look good." And then I just remembered, I've had 3 missions in a row. So they try to phase it out so you didn't go on too many and then you get rest camp. If you went on one like you went to Ploesti, you went to Vienna, and it turned out pretty bad for you, and they would send you to the Isle of Capri or send you to Rome for rest camp. That's pretty good.
How many missions did you fly?
I call it 50 missions, but you got credit for only 35 sorties. So, yeah.
And how often, let's say in the course of a week, how many missions would you fly on an average?
What's that again?
On the average, how many missions a week would you fly?
Oh, well, you had to fly your quota before you could go home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean?
No, like for instance, before you reach your quota, like in a week's time, how many missions would you be scheduled?
Oh, yeah. In other words, it took me 10 months to go through all my missions and rest camp and hanging around the squadron and stuff like that. Yeah.
So about 3 missions per week?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. And a busy week, you do 4 to 5?
No. That's scary.
Yeah. You start making mistakes.
Yeah.
Tell them about your living condition.
Yeah.
Tell them about your living conditions, your
Oh,
pants
yeah.
and the
Yeah. Well, that's another interesting thing. When I talked about the cameras, the big cameras, this big, they take pictures of the bomb thing. Well, they didn't keep them all, so you'd try to get some of them the old pictures, and you would boil the emulsion off, so you had a clear piece of plastic which you could become a window in your tent. And we had tents that were, first of all, there was the old square box tent. You all remember that. I guess you've seen it in pictures anyhow. And what we had, we get this cement block that they would mine, cut out. The Italians would cut it out for you, and they would build you cement walls for your tent. And they would build a square hole where you could put this window in. And we fixed it so it made the tent bigger. The flaps you would put out this way over the wall, so you had more room inside the tent instead of going right down like this. And then that made the tent bigger. And then they had was fragmentation bombs, or the other one is incendiary bombs. They came in tin boxes, and the inside, and they were tin box, and then outside of that was a wooden box. And they had guys there that were blacksmiths and whatnot on this in the group area that knew how to put things together, and they would build you window frames you could tack that plastic to, so you'd have light inside your tent. And another thing they did, which is interesting, I don't know where they got them, but they used to get French 75 shell casings, which is a shell. The shell is about like this, and the casing was that a big around and about this long. And so they would take that casing and cut it down to it was only about this high, and as that round, and you use that as a part of your heating thing. And then the guys that were good at this would take the inside of the fragmentation bomb, made of tin, and they would roll it and beat it together so it'd be of a stovepipe to go up through the top of the tent, and then they would build a rectangular, a pyramid type thing with a hole in it for a smokestack. You know, and then you'd have some old hydraulic lines that come off an airplane to go from a gas tank, one of those B4 cans or whatever you call them, outside your tent, and they had a shut-off valve on it, and you'd let the water, the gas, you'd have to use diesel fuel, come in and drip into the shell casing. It was about that high, and we'd light it, and it'd get so hot that you could get it down to just a drip, and it would flash. And you'd heat up your, and then you'd had to put that thing in, you had this 55-gallon oil drum, which was cut in half. And you'd have that sitting on blocks in the center of your tent with a hole in it for the tubing to go into, to drip into the shell casing. And then they build a smokestack on that to put the metal over that made the stovepipe would go up through the tent. So, and then you just let that water drip in there, and it'd just be as cozy as you could be in there. And they made doors too out of that wood. So that's the only wood you could get, because the Italians didn't have any. It was wheat fields. Oh yeah. My wife wants me to tell you about the rat trap we had. We lived in this wheat field, and the rats, the mice, mostly mice, would come around and they'd burrow underneath you had this cleachy block tent floor, which is just like tiles. You have about this size and about that high, and you'd lay them in just like tile. You didn't cement them in, you just laid them in to make a flooring. And they'd come up, and if you had anything laying out that they could eat, they would just snip on it. Well, got tired of that, so I got a bucket, and I had some masking tape, and I had a newspaper and I taped it over the top of the bucket. I filled the bucket about that much water in it, and took a razor blade and slit an X in the taped up paper, and then I ran a ramp up the side, and then with a coat hanger, old coat hanger, a piece of wire, I hung a piece of cheese over the center. And so the mice would run up there to get the cheese, they'd fall in the thing, and they would die, of course. They couldn't, they'd drown. So everybody in the squadron was borrowing my rat trap. Get rid of those mice running around, eating up your candy bars. Yeah.
Could you describe the airplane you flew, the type of airplane, and?
B-24, that's the only one during World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's,
Oh, could you describe it?
oh, describe it.
Yeah,
B-24 was like a boxcar. It was a short airplane. You've seen the B-17 down here at Wickham Field. Well, it's a little bit shorter than that, but boxcar type thing. And it would hold a bigger load than the B-17. However, you couldn't fly as high. 27,000 is about as far as you could go, whereas the B-17 could go up to maybe 31,000. Anyhow, it had a stubby nose on the thing, and that's where the navigator and the bombardier sat. And then it had a flight deck up above that. And to get in the airplane, you'd go through the nose wheel and up, and then climb up into your seat. And then it had a bomb bay, which it would hold 4 1,000-pound bombs. But usually you took 500-pounders because it spread out a better pattern. And had an engineer, besides the bombardier and navigator and 2 pilots, and an engineer, and he had control of the top turret, which was hydraulic, could swing around everything. And the navigator bombardier had a couple of machine guns sticking out the front glass. And then back in the waist, you had 2 waist gunners on either side with 50 caliber machine guns. And then you had a radio operator back there. And then you had a ball turret gunner. Now, they try to get guys that were small in size, put them in those ball turrets because they're very restrictive. And they hated that because they were afraid they're going to get stuck in there and they couldn't get out and the airplane's going to go down with them in it. So they would try not to put that ball turret down until they were told to, or you got close to where you needed it, where fighters were. And then it'd crank down, hand crank down, and then they'd sit in there with like this, with the guns, and then they could move it around hydraulically. And then they had a tail gunner, and he's sitting back in a compartment, which is all glassed in, of course, and with 2 50 caliber machine guns. And that was the armament, and that was the size of the airplane. It was about 68,000 pounds is what it weighed, if you can measure that. And it had what they call a Davis wing. And that was a wing that was slender at the beginning, and then it went fat, and then it went slender again, because they could put more, lift more weight with that wing than they could with a regular flatter surface wing, because the air bent more over the top of the wing. And of course, and then the engineer and they had a little auxiliary engine down in the Bombay area that you could start when you were on the ground, and would give you power. You didn't have to get power from outside. You could use your own power from this engine to get your starters going, to get the engines turning. Yeah.
How many engines?
How many engines?
4 engine, twin tail. Yeah.
One question: when was the last time you flew? When was the last time you were in a B-21?
Oh, B-24.
24.
Yeah, the last time I flew B-24 was on my last mission, I guess, about flew that airplane, was back in May of 44.
Wow.
Yeah, but then I went to work for Pan Am.
Yeah. How did the airplane handle?
But say it again?
How did the airplane, the B-24 handle compared to the other airplanes that you've flown? How did it handle? Was it?
How did it handle?
Yes.
It was pretty stiff. Of course, you didn't have any hydraulic controls or anything like that. Pretty stiff holding on to it. And then you had to stay in formation, so you're constantly on the rudders and doing like this, and maybe a little power back and forth. You know, the less power you use, the better, because you got to save fuel. Yeah, to stay in formation. Yeah. B-24. I didn't have any pictures. I wish I did.
Yeah, we should be able to find a couple on the internet. Yeah, and things like that. We should be able to find some on the
Didn't you
internet.
bring one?
Well, it's one in my book there. You open up, it shows the crew. Yeah, there one.
There you go.
That's the only one I could find. This is about you guys here, and that's the crew.
That's you guys?
Yeah, and what they used to do was assign a bombardier navigator to the crew. We didn't have one that went with us all the time. We got somebody who was fill in. They'd lose people, and these guys would be left behind for some reason or other, and they would fill in. There's a couple of the guys, I don't remember who they were. I recognize their faces. Elliot Rosenberg, he's the guy that we used to have we'd take turns being in command of the aircraft. And he used to accuse me of being superstitious. coming to the up to the squadron headquarters, you had to pick up a secret edition of papers. It said your mission, where you were going, and it's on the paper that said what was the password for the day, stuff like that, you know. And I always look for number 7, folder number 7. He says, you're superstitious. Says, I just take the one on top. And I said, I dare you to reach down the middle and pull one out. He wouldn't do it. You had a certain way. You walked to the squadron mess hall, way back. You did certain things just in order. You were supposed to put your name on everything you owned, so they could, if you didn't come back, they could ship your things home. I says, don't do it to mine, I'm coming back. That's right.
How long were you in the service then?
Oh boy, not long.
Yeah.
Of course, let's say in 1943, March is when I actually started in the service, and I was out in June of 45. Now, most of 43 was all training, 44 was overseas, and 45 overseas. Came back, that was nice. I went to Eastern Airlines. A friend of mine was a captain on Eastern Airlines. He took me in Miami, see this Eastern Airlines chief pilot. And they said they couldn't hire me because I wasn't 5'9". That's crazy. In those days they could do that.
Yeah.
And so I went over to Pan Am, and Pan Am says, when you get out? And I said, right now. So on July 4th, 1945, I was out. I had enough points to get out. A friend of mine was tow target work on B-17s out of Boca Raton. He came by our house in Lake Worth. He said, if you got enough points, you can get out. So I put on my uniform, went down to Mima Beach where the area where the headquarters was, and separation headquarters. And they looked it over and said, "Yep, you can get out." I said, "Okay." I went out right nice. So I went up to Marietta, Georgia, base up there, give you a physical and everything, and then, okay, here's your papers, you're out. Went to Pan American, and on July 10th, 1945, I was working for Pan Am.
Yeah, even before the war ended then, or
Right.
just at the tail end of the war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you choose the branch of the service, and how did you choose the pilot training?
Well, I was home let's see, in 42, I was still in college. And I was home in the summer, and I heard that if you went enlisted, they'd let you stay in school till they needed you. So I went out to Morrison Air Force Base, and I said, "I want to enlist." They said, "Okay." And so I enlisted in the Army Air Corps. So that was how I got in. I didn't know what it was just luck. You know, that's what I wanted to do anyhow, rather than be a foot soldier, you know.
How did you get into pilot training then? How was the selection process? on that?
Oh, well, that was, you went through, they had a base in Memphis, it was, Nashville, Tennessee, where a center where you took these tests to see if you had the aptitude to be a pilot, or if you were super smart, you could be a navigator, all that stuff. So that's how they determined that you're a pilot. And I went through school. I went down to start in. I'd never flown before. And I went down to, went to Maxwell Field, Alabama. That's where you get your training as the cadets. Then you go to flight school. Went down to Ocala, Florida here. And Stearman, 17, PT-17, bi-wing plane. You've seen there's a guy, tow target around, tow thing around here. That's a 17, a P-17. Two cockpit with an instructor, and flew that thing till he said I could solo. And then you went out and you practiced and whatnot. Geez, it was cold in those days. Open cockpit. And then from there I went to Bainbridge, Georgia, which was an intermediate school where they had PT 19s. It was, no, not primary training. Well, it was middle training. And you flew these things. There was a covered cockpit there, and two pilots could do it, and you flew with an instructor for a while, and you learned formation flying, and you learned landing and stuff like that with this bigger airplane. And then after that, you were sent to advanced school. Some people went to single engine school, and some of us went to advanced. Now, I went to advanced twin engine training, and flew that thing for, I guess, about 3 or 4 months, and then okay, now they're going to assign you to a crew. So you went home on leave. That's after you graduated and got your wings and stuff like that. Went to Westover, Massachusetts, where I got assigned as crew. And then we went from there, as a crew, we went to Savannah, Georgia, where we did more formation flying and learning about high altitude flying, had an instructor, and going on a mission, so to speak. And then they shipped you overseas. Yeah.
What was Florida like during World War II?
Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was pretty good. I mean, there weren't too many people, of course, and Ocala was mainly a school, run privately for pilot training. And gosh almighty, I remember while I was going to school there, I was, excuse me, they had the Silver Meteor run through Gainesville and Ocala, and it only a flag stop, and it'd go down to West Palm Beach. Well, I'd get a pass to go home. I lived in Lake Worth. The commandant of cadets there at Ocala thought I was saying Lake Wales, so which is too far away, so he gave me a pass. So I'd go, for Saturday I would go down home on the Silver Meteor. They'd come in and it was, if it stopped in Ocala, I'd get on, but if it didn't, I'm out of luck. So the conductor would see you standing there and says, what's your chair car? I said, chair car E, that's it right there. Well, I'd get on and I'd sit in the lounge area till he came by and I said, I don't have a ticket. Well, he'd get a little bit peeved. But he gave me a ticket to go to West Palm Beach, where my folks would come and pick me up. I'd stay Saturday night there, and Sunday morning I'd get on the Silver Meteor going back to Ocala. Now, if it didn't stop in Ocala, I'd have to go right on up to Stark, Florida, which is an Army base. But yeah, lucky for me, they stopped every time I got off. Yeah.
It brought a lot of people into Florida, the war, didn't it?
What about it?
The war brought a lot of people into Florida.
Yeah, a lot of people, and a lot of bases. You know, a friend of mine taught out of Arcadia out here. He taught British pilots to fly. Guys that didn't even know how to drive a car were learning how to fly airplanes. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Amazing. How long did your flight training take? About a year?
Yeah.
And you were qualified as a bomber pilot at that point then?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Basic, yeah. And when you got overseas, we went via Gander, Newfoundland, and then we went to the Azores, and then from there we went down to Marrakesh in Africa, and then from Marrakesh we went to Tripoli, and then from there over to our base in Cerignola. But when you got through these areas and you got to the base in southern Italy, they took and sort of modified your airplane. They did some other things on it, make it stronger here and there and whatnot. Yeah. And along those lines is B-24J. You were sitting, I think Ford made that, and you were sitting like in a coffin. The metal that thick all around you going up just like a coffin, and you're sitting back in there and you're going in your flak suit. And then that was trying to protect you a little bit more better. And it did. I didn't hear anything ping off the outside. But you could hear flak hit the airplane.
Really?
Oh yeah. Prrr, make a noise. And dust fly. And then I got one of the guys in the engine department down back at our base gave me a piece of flak that came out of my engine, one of my engines, and it was about that big, and you could see the base of the shell, the reamed, how it was in there. It was an 88 millimeter piece of flak. Everybody used to you look up ahead, you're going down the bomb run, and here's this puff, puff up, these black flags. And you shouldn't get scared of that, but everybody did get scared of that. It's what you didn't see you should get scared of, because the ones that get up there that hadn't burst yet didn't leave any trail. It's the ones that had already burst that would leave a black cloud. So forget that. They've already done their damage. Yeah. Yeah. You got anything else?
Any more? Okay. We'd like to thank you for coming
Yeah,
out.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad to talk about it
It's
once
been
in
a
a while.
Oh, thank you. Did any of the other guys tell you of all the all of the uniform that they put on?
No.
Well, they had, okay.
Yeah, that would be real interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it was wintertime, so you had a pair of long johns you wore. Then you put on your flight suit. First of all, if you're going to get shot down, you want to have a pair of pants to wear. So you put on those Air Force pinks, as they call them, or regular GI issue pants, and a shirt over that. And then you put on your flight jacket, that B2 jacket that's leather, you know, have that on. And then
That's the end of our.
okay. And then on top of that, you had your Mae West. Then you could go out to the flight line, and you would draw your heated suit, which would go over the top of all that. And then you would draw your flak helmet, which is like an old Army GI helmet with earpieces on it. And then you had the flak suit, looks like a umpire's jacket with it was with strips of metal that wide and about real thick, and it was hanging on you on the front. And strips, you know, it was supposed to stop the flak, you know, getting punctured. And then on top of that, you had gloves. You had silk gloves you wore first, which would keep your hands, if you took them out of the gloves, they wouldn't stick to a metal. And then then you had on your heated gloves, and then regular gloves. Then you had on a fleece-lined jacket and pants with the straps over to hold them up. And then you had on these flight boots, which were fleece-lined. And then we heard about guys that were bailing out. They're losing those boots that come off. So, okay, fix me. So I took a piece of like, you call like.
I have to hit a class here.
Okay. All right. You take a piece of. Nice to meet you.
It was nice
See
meeting
you.
you.
A piece of what do you call that stuff you make?
Velcro?
No, it was like metal, and you made it with a hook on it. And I used to hook my GI shoes to my belt. So if I was going to bail out, I was going to have a pair of shoes to walk around in.
Aluminum? Is that what you're trying to think of? Aluminum? Aluminum?
No, it was
A copper wire?
wire, but it was stainless steel. You know, cable. That's what I meant to say. Cable. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Is that everything?
It's for
Can you
me. How about you?
imagine